Welcome. Invitation to the cookout. You got your boy, TheeAlexMac, DapperDom in the building. Trademark DapperDom cup, man. Hey, it's the middle of the summer. We here to keep giving you guys something every single time, something good, man. I know we took a little bit of a break from, the food and fitness and health stuff, although we talked about mental health and never forget that is still, part of health in general. But I think we got some good stuff today. We gonna really take a peek up under the tent with some good stuff today, man. What we got going on, Dom?
Man, what's on the grill today? We're gonna talk about one of my favorites, man. I absolutely love hot dogs. For my 30th, I even had a hot dog bar for my 30th birthday party, man. Yeah, like different toppings, you know what I'm saying? Like just from chili, bacon. I love hot dogs. I was kind of intrigued on kind of looking behind the scenes on, because you hear these things like what go in hot dogs and stuff like that, and are they really healthy and things of that nature, man. So I was excited about doing this. Before we gotta get started, man, do you even know, like, I know you're a history guy, so you're a big history guy. Like, do you know where like hot dogs came from?
No, I like how you, man, look, we got sports history on too, man, representing KG. I don't know if y'all youngins know, he didn't just play on the Celtics, man, a little KG, little sports history. But in terms of food history, most people credit hot dogs coming, I would say, being influenced from the Germans. If you think about it, during the time of like the 1800s, there was obviously a lot of immigration going on and people coming into the country. And I think you can see that with a lot of food cultures is when they came in, it wasn't what we know today as a hot dog. Yeah. But they came from a history that was big into sausage making in general. Yep. So if you think about wurst, or we call them in the States, we're more familiar with the brats and bratwurst, but they had a whole kind of library of different things and sausages that they made during that time. So I think the influence, there's different things I've heard in terms of some of the stands in Coney Island in New York, and them being like the first people to really kind of bring it. I think it goes back to what we talked about with wings in the earlier episode, is founding versus popularizing. So I think there could be a lot of people that could claim that they created it or brought it in, but I definitely would say it's German influence. Yeah, I would be surprised if it wasn't someone that had German heritage.
I like to, ever since we started doing this podcast, you talk about like being food history guy, I started looking at about like where foods came from. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of say that it even started before Germany. It was like Germany made it famous, but Emperor Nero, his chef, apparently legend has it. I don't know how, you know what I mean? Like stories out
that's taking it back.
Yeah, legend has it that he had roasted a pig and he stuck it, and like these intestines and stuff fell out. And he was kind of pleased with his discovery, as they say, and so he stuffed these cases with like meat and spices. Mm-hmm. And over time, like the legend of what we know as today, the hot dog, grew when it migrated to Germany. Yeah. And then Germany kind of coined the phrase Dachshund dog, is what they call it. A Dachshund. Yeah, Dachshund dog. And as we know in the States, a wiener dog. Yeah. So that's what they called it.
Yeah.
And so,
because I think it is the Dachshund is the long one that looks like a wiener.
Yeah. We call it Dachshund, but like they pronounce it differently than we do. But like you said, how it got to the States is a bunch of German immigrants came over, and who made it popular is Charles Feltner back in like 1860s. And then just depending on who's telling the story, legend has it how the name hot dog came about was they were selling Dachshund dogs at baseball games, and they were selling them from like these hot water tanks, and they were throwing them like, get your Dachshund dog, get your Dachshund dog. Mm-hmm. And a writer was like, that's too long of a word. And so since they were coming out of these hot water tanks, he said,
I like it.
He wrote a paper saying, get your hot dogs. So that's where the word hot dog came from.
Right, drop some gems.
Yeah, and so but before we get into, some of the myth busting about hot dogs, we want to engage y'all too. We're gonna engage y'all on social media, kind of asking like, hey, what's your favorite type of hot dog? We'll put a poll out there. So participate in that poll, and also too, in the comments in the show, name some things that you put on your hot dog that might be unusual to other people. Like I like a chili cheese hot dog. Like I worked at Sonic back in high school. I'm not going to say how many I paid for versus not paid for. I think the statute of limitations is passed on them getting that money back. Hey, but I do tip the waiters, the car hops, and when they bring me food, I tip them good.
Really?
Pick up to make, Sonic? Yeah.
No, we used to have a Sonic at home, and we used to go there and hang out. They used to be my spot. I guess I missed out, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I tipped to make up for all the chili cheese dogs I made in the back. I'm a traditional mustard relish or mustard and sauerkraut guy. Although if there's some fried coleslaw, I'll just put coleslaw on that thing with a hot dog.
Okay.
And eat it. So let us know what you like to put on your hot dog.
Have you ever had a Chicago dog before?
Too much, man. Too much stuff on there. Would you like the tomatoes?
Man, I thought he was cool, man.
Too much, bro.
I thought he was cool,
Too
man.
much.
That's my, man, just being born there, family being there, man, that was one of the things when I moved down here, it was like, I will give them credit. There's a lot of good ethnic cuisines down here.
Yeah.
But regional, man, I would come down here and be like, man, I need that, man. Like I got it. I love me a good Chicago dog, man. You just gotta. It has to be made properly.
Okay.
And I think if you have it just all on it, sometimes it can feel like it's too much and it's sloppy and it's soggy.
If our listeners who's not familiar with a Chicago dog, let them know what all goes on.
Yes,
sir.
Too much. Yes, sir. That's Chicago dog. So they call it kind of dragging it through the garden to what Dom is saying in terms of what's on there. So you're going to have neon green relish. Okay, you can't just do. I've seen a lot of people do them without the neon green relish.
Okay,
that's one of the signatures. Okay, you gotta be neon green relish. It's gonna have sport peppers on there. It's gonna have usually 2 tomato slices on it. It'll have diced onions. It'll have mustard. I hate mustard, so I always have to make sure that they not add it on there, or there's gonna be some problems. And then you'll have celery salt kind of sprinkled on the top of it. In a poppy seed, and usually in a steamed poppy seed bun, and that's a Chicago dog. And I could definitely see how someone could feel like it's too much, man. I could see that.
I could have ordered a salad myself. That's
salad in the bun.
Yeah, that's all it is.
I feel you, man. I feel you.
No disrespect to you, Chicagoans. I just can't rock. I don't even know if I can. I'm not even gonna bring that up. Could be a sore subject. I don't even know if I can rock with the Chicago style pizza. I feel like that's too much too, man.
I'm not a big.
Y'all just too much up there anyway.
I'm not a big deep dish pizza guy myself. I will every once in a while I'll have it, and just because. But I will admit I'm not much of a deep dish guy.
Yeah, okay. All right, man. Like we talked about in a prior episode, like we're gonna be like doing some myth busting and just talking about like what's in foods, what's real, what's not. The food scientist guy, man. Let's talk about just your regular.
Yeah, we got some. I thought this would be good for you guys just to see the different ones and kind of break them down, man.
Yeah. What goes into this?
So yeah, let's talk about it. And I think one of the big things that you talked about that's important to me is a lot of the foods that we talk about, and the majority of what you see on your shelf, I don't know if there's a percentage, but I'll say majority, over 50%, they're over 100 years old in terms of when they were created.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us to understand the historical context of how these things were created.
Yeah.
Because I think it takes into account maybe why they are the way that they are now. So a lot of these, it's not like you fast forward in 1990, they created a hot dog because what was available technology-wise in terms of food manufacturing is much different than what was available, you know, in the mid 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. So those are things to kind of keep in mind. I think there are a few other historical pieces to kind of take into context as well. When hot dogs were created, they really were seen as a working man's food.
Okay.
So it was things that at the time, if you think about that time period, let's call it early 1900s. Yeah. It wasn't something that people, one, were familiar with based off of what it was coming from, but two, it wasn't something that they saw as a premium eating experience, right?
Yep.
But you have to also think about the times where a lot of these things were popularized were during the times where our country was under a lot of economic stress. So if you go ahead,
and that you said that, I believe that like how the hot dog kind of blew up in America, that it was so inexpensive and I could feed my family for, because I think they were like 1 cent or 2 cents or so. They weren't more than like 5 cents.
Yeah.
And so like a person's like, oh, I can feed my entire family for 20 cents, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so like it was able to absolutely take care of my entire family for relatively nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the context of what this was built. Now, as you start to kind of peel the layers back on that, and this is just food in general.
Yep.
But company is trying to make as much money or profit off of anything that they make, whether it's the hat that you got on or shoes.
By the way, your boy looking like he's about to go play.
He about to hit the rounds, boy. He about to go out there and get his Tigers on.
Nah, my boy, he just missed the cut.
I heard that, man. That was
so man, maybe an early Tiger, not a late
he's
Tiger.
still going at it though, man. He still love golf, I'm guessing. So, but they're trying to make the most money they can off of it, and we have to understand that, right?
For sure.
They're not giving it to us at cost. That's the term to basically say, hey, if it costs me 50 cents to make this, they're not giving it to us for 50 cents because they won't make any money off of it. So as they were making the hot dogs, one of the things that kind of makes me laugh at Americans is, you know, how often we turn our nose up to different things. So if you think when this was coming, there were two things. When you look at the origins of sausage, and not just this, but you looked at like cured processing meats, it was very common for them to use less desirable parts of the animal.
Yep.
That could include organs at that time.
Okay.
At that time, when they were making bologna and different things like that, they were using, you know, cheap meat. And for some people from the South, you probably have heard of hog head cheese.
Yep.
That's usually, you're just using the cheap meat from the head of the animal to make that, right?
Yeah.
So during that time period, it was very common for things to be made that way outside of the United States. Yeah. And no one would turn their nose up and say, oh, it's liver in there or it's X in there. They will eat it because that's what they were accustomed to. So with that transitioning over to the U.S., you had some people that were very maybe uncomfortable with what they perceived was maybe in there. Yeah. And I think during that time period, and even now, the food industry has not done its best at being transparent. Not that they're hiding anything, but saying like, hey, here is, you know, what is going on. So when you're not transparent, people are going to make assumptions about what they hear or what they believe are in it. And I think a pivotal thing within the meat industry that affected this was a book wrote by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle. It was released in 1906. And essentially what he did, he was undercover, I guess you could call it, at a meat processing plant. And he pretty much wrote a book about how disgraceful and unsanitary and just how crazy the meat industry was. And that really sparked change for legislation and things to really kind of put some more boundaries and structure around what was going on within the meat industry. So that helped from that perspective. When you start to get a little bit further in terms of what was happening with hot dogs, it really was, how can we feed Americans and use, I would say, parts of the animal that are considered maybe undesirable to make this product. Now, we'll myth bust right here. There are not hooves in hot dogs. There are not any of the crazy stuff that you guys, that I've heard people come up with. I've worked on hot dogs earlier in my career. One of my first internship projects was on hot dogs. So when I tell people that, they're like, man, you still eat hot dogs after you know what's in them? And it's like, yeah, it's in. Some of it is because I do know what's in them, so I have no problem in consuming hot dogs. So I think at that time period, the hot dogs that most people will be familiar with is what Don talked to a little bit earlier, wieners. So wieners, industry term we used to use called blends, basically just saying that it's multiple meats
in there
that are included in it. So most people will notice from a blend hot dog, we have Oscar Mayer wieners right here. We go in and look, it says wieners made with chicken, turkey, and pork.
Yep.
So that's just letting you know what's in that specific hot dog.
Yeah.
Honestly, until I was an adult, that's probably, I think that's what most Americans ate.
Yeah.
I don't think beef hot dogs, really all beef hot dogs became a popular thing until, I don't really know year-wise, but it was much later on than when they were originally introduced to us as Americans.
Speaking of, how many hot dogs do you think Americans, just U.S., consume a year?
Like, on average, one person or all of us together?
All, and then give me average. All, and then give me average.
I'd probably think that it's in the billions.
Okay. What? Low billions, high billions? What we got?
I'd say low billions.
Okay.
We got a lot of snooty people, so they too good to eat the hot dogs. Average per person, man, I'd probably have to say 65, 70
billion.
No,
we go 65,
like
per person.
Yeah, per person.
Okay.
If I averaged it out.
All right. So, according to the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council, U.S. reaped 9 billion hot dogs are sold by retailers. Just retailers. That's me.
Yeah, just sold.
Sold. Now, they say you add later on events like sporting events, carnivals, restaurants, that number goes to about 19 to 20 billion hot dogs being purchased in a year. And that averages out to about 70 hot dogs per person. Yeah, that was close. That was close. It's got study. Yeah, about we average about 70 hot dogs per person a year, which I was thinking, like, man, do I really consume 70? You know what I mean? So now I'm going to start taking count of, like, how often am I eating hot dogs?
I mean, it's not really a brag, but
yeah.
I mean, hot dogs you could put away some easily.
Yeah.
2 in a sitting. You know what I'm saying? I feel like most people are, eating 2 in a sitting. I mean, probably in my younger prime days, I could throw down 4.
Okay, yeah.
In my prime.
And you talk about they were cheap, relatively cheap, to feed your family. Also, too, hot dogs have a little protein in them.
Yeah,
about 6 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So an inexpensive way to get some protein in as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, wieners, I think most people grew up, at least maybe in our generation and older, that's what most people ate. And then with anything, I think us as consumers, we really drive what the market is looking for. Now, there's always innovation that we don't see that's going on behind the scenes, but a lot of that is tailored, or a good portion of it is tailored towards what feedback they're getting from consumers in terms of what they are looking for. So we talked about this in earlier episodes around like gluten, or even some of the labeling you're seeing on here. We'll get into this Nathan's, but this Nathan says no fillers, no byproducts, no artificial flavors or colors, no gluten, no corn syrup. So as it evolved, those things did have some of those ingredients, but then as consumers either say, hey, we don't like that for whatever reason, or, you know, different health organizations start, you know, reporting different things, then they react to kind of make those changes. But for the longest time, I think most of us grew up eating the wieners, man.
Yeah. And I didn't even realize until I started just kind of looking at the labels that hot dogs had like corn syrup and stuff in there. Didn't know, but it was like, now that I start to think about it, like it does have a certain sweetness to it. And the reason why probably that Nathan say no corn syrup, because, you know, corn syrup is produces glucose. And I know glucose says we use that as fuel for the body, but like not when it's an additive, you know what I mean? Because like fruit and stuff got natural sugars, you know what I'm saying? Like natural glucose in it, but it's just the, I guess like man-made manufactured glucose that people are kind of leery of. So that's why you have that, like no corn syrup on those labels.
Yeah. So I think there's two things to that point. And I mean, we could talk about this for a long time, just the food industry, but I think we have to understand as a people that when you're talking about mass food production, the amount of ingredients that is needed in order to make these products is substantial, right? So it's not like you can just go in your cupboard and say, hey, I need a cup of water, or I need a cup of sugar. Well, you're talking about quite a bit. So when these things happen and people are like, hey, we need to remove XYZ out of it, as a food scientist, I would question you all back and say, okay, where are we going to find it? Where are we going to find enough volume, enough of that ingredient so that we can make all of the hot dogs that we put on the shelf for you guys? I think most people say, oh, no. Because they don't know. They have no idea in terms of the technology pipeline behind what's needed to go into these hot dogs and the functionality of ingredients. So I'll walk us through these ingredient lines. I like to think of this analogy I came up with, and I don't know if I've seen one before, but an orchestra. In an orchestra, everyone has a role, right? And it's multi-people, multi-layers, multi-sections, right? When you think about any food, a lot of people are like, oh, why can't you take the sodium diacetate out? Because it seems like, oh, that's a big scientific word. We need to take that out because, you know, I think a lot of people just see, I can't pronounce it. It sounds scientific. It must be bad. I'm not trying to come at anybody, but that's what I feel like. A lot of people just see these words and say, I don't know what that is, so it must be something bad. And so I think that's part of what we're here to help educate you know, what that is about as well.
That word that you just used, because you'll see like sodium, like no sodium, like nitrate or nitrite. And what some people don't realize is that it's actually in a lot of our leafy greens. Now, I think, and you can educate me on this, I think like the difference that I've kind of read and stumbled upon is that when we're eating it from that natural source, because it's in our soil and things like that, that when we consume it just like from vegetables or fruit, that it turns into nitric oxide in our system that helps with blood flow, helps lower blood pressure. But when you use it as an additive in meats, because it's found a lot of meats as a preservative, that's when I guess it could be harmful to our body. Like, let me get your thoughts on
so nitrites are used for curing within meats.
Yeah.
And so if you go back a little bit, again, Dom's talked about this. I'm a history person. I think you guys can't understand some of these things until you know some of the history. Before all of these things came, all you had was salt.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first curing, thing that in it, but it was multifunctional, flavor and curing. And there's a belief that during that time that there were some components of salt that had nitrates in them that help with the color, the color that we see on meats, right?
Yeah.
So if you just took salt and cured meat with it, it will give like a brownish gray color.
Yep.
If I ask 10 people would they eat, and I put that in front of them and say, yep, it's cured, it's safe to eat, everyone will turn their nose up and be like,
it's brownish.
It's brownish. So again, this is helping you guys understand food has to look appealing for somebody to want it.
Yeah, for sure.
Just think of what we're doing with nitrites as makeup.
Yeah.
Swore that you ladies go in and go out for the night, and you go out for that dinner. Some of you all say, hey, I gotta put this makeup and it
gotta
has
the face.
You gotta get the face beat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So think of that as makeup for this to say, hey, in order for this to look appealing, again, this is all tied back to a company that's trying to make money. We're not gonna try to demonize things. But they're trying to make money. So if I put this out here and say, yeah, this has 3 ingredients on it, it sounds good, but are you going to eat it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that will look at it and say, oh, it doesn't look appealing. It doesn't taste the same. It doesn't have the same texture. So a lot of these ingredients, again, going back to nitrites, are functional ingredients within the food that we within the food that we eat. Functional meaning flavor, appearance, texture, water retention. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can go down in terms of, and if you think about that orchestra, when you say, hey, can we take this out? Or can we take these things out? And then if I serve it to you, you're going to say, no, it don't taste the same. Yeah. So you guys are giving us requirements. It got to be healthy. It can't have scientific ingredients. It can't have a lot of ingredients on it. As the cost is a certain price, you can't create what the things that you guys want aren't available with all of those parameters and boundaries that you're looking at. Right. So then it's important to do some education. So when you talked about the nitrites piece, there is regulations in terms of how much maximum amount of nitrites that can be used in meats in general. And there was research done that the maximum amount of nitrites in cured meat is 20 to 40 times below what will be considered a lethal or harmful dose to the human body. So it goes back to some of these things saying, could it be the context, right? If I just go and say, nitrite can be harmful, it could do this, yes. But how much would you need to consume to be able to get up to that amount? And it would be an amount that even somebody that's, struggling with eating too much food or obesity, different things, it will be hard for them to surpass. There was another thing I read, and you talked about it being naturally occurring, that said the average human that consumes cured meats, only about 5% of their nitrite consumption comes from cured meats.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of, can you get the people what's the difference in cured and uncured meat? Because we're throwing those.
To me, I don't like the term uncured. I think it's a little bit misleading. To me, I think it's alternatively cured. It's you're mimicking the curing process, but you're just using natural ingredients, naturally occurring ingredients that the customer is familiar or comfortable with. So here I have can't see the label, but it's from Walmart's market side. It's their uncured Angus beef franks. So the reason why I say it is alternatively cured is because their use of I'll read the ingredients quickly, but it's Angus beef, water, 2% less of the following: salt, spices including paprika, natural flavors, sodium phosphates, cultured celery powder, sugar, and cherry powder. So your cultured celery powder and your cherry powder are acting as your curing agents. The cultured celery powder is acting as your nitrite functioning, ingredient within it.
Yep.
And then your cherry powder is acting as your coloring, or it could be what we call, I promised myself I was gonna get too scientific with this stuff because
What word you got?
I didn't want to
What word you got?
lose you guys. But you have what's considered, so if I go to one of our to our Nathans, I think in here, their sodium erythrobate is considered is considered
What is that?
it's considered a reductant. And so what happens is it's another way of saying that it reduces the nitrite in a form so that it can create that color, and it's like a cure accelerator is what we call it in the industry. So it helps with the setting and the tone of the color within the product. But again, all those things I'm talking about are functional ingredients. But I go back to that. I don't necessarily like the term uncured.
Okay.
If it was up to me, I think I would call it alternatively cured. But this is the power of marketing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit before. This is a time to be able to talk about how it gives you guys, and hopefully nobody comes after me, but it gives you guys if I turn up missing, y'all know who found me, man. It's the food mafia. Uncured, I feel like, gives a consumer a safe sense of comfortability around what's going on.
Yeah.
And there are things that go into there are people who work in food companies, and there is, I forgot the name of the entity within the government, but there are labeling regulations around what you can and cannot say. For some of these things, they've been around so long, but as you start to introduce this new technology, they're being bombarded with, okay, what is okay to say? Why is it not okay? Why is it okay to say some of these things on package? So some of these things, even when you look into like the vegan market, when they first came out, they were saying meatless hamburgers. Then people, I think lobbyists and the people who work within the meat industry were like, they shouldn't be able to call that a hamburger because my standard of identity. That's something that you hear a lot within the food industry. But standard identity is basically saying that most Americans know a hamburger to be what?
Yeah.
A meat patty formed from a cow, blah, 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 blah. And they have all this different stuff they can get to. So if you're putting that it's a vegan meatless hamburger, by standard of identity, it's not. So you've seen a lot of those start to change in terms of vegan, something, vegan patties, and not being able to call it out as being, chicken or, different things like that, which I think is fair because it can be misleading.
So is that where you think like the Impossible Burger or something like them, where they use that, you know what I mean? Like, how is it possible to have a burger without?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The answer is it's not possible.
Okay.
It's just a clever way for them to try to play around with things to get market share and get people to buy their product. But yeah, to me, I think there is, when you look at the science behind it, I would say I would call it alternatively cured. Okay. And again, is there anything inherently wrong with, cured meats? Mm-hmm. No. To me, I think, again, what it would take to activate some of the issues that you talked about health-wise, I think it would take overconsumption, or it would take a diet that is not balanced.
Yeah.
So let's say you're eating a pack of these in 4 days. Every 4 days you gotta get a new pack because you eating, you know, 8 hot dogs. Yeah, that's not. So to me, I think my mantra has always been everything is good in moderation.
I think it's totally like that balance piece. Like you said, like too much water. Like you can drink too much water.
Yeah.
You can drink too much water. You can eat too much fruit. Like anything you can do too much of.
Yes.
And so like what we kind of wanted you guys to know is I wouldn't say there's a bad hot dog. Like I don't think this is bad. Like now I don't know whether eating 70 a year. I have to go see.
Gotta break that
Yeah,
back.
I gotta break that back down. Because I love them all beef, regular, turkey. I eat them all. I hadn't had the impossible like hot dog, whatever you want to call it. I tried one of those, but all beef franks, I eat them all. And what we just want to let y'all know is you can too. Like it's all about balance and understanding what's on the label and not being confused or misled by big words.
Yes.
It's I think my takeaway from this. Yes. Because I'm gonna keep eating hot dogs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even
he's going to the crib, right? My son seen these. He's like, man, when you putting them on the grill?
Yeah. Because even my doctor, he was like, man, like life just isn't life without a hamburger once in a while or a hot dog.
Something about
yeah. So just understanding what's on that ingredient and what does that mean, and doing your own research. And so like that's what we're here for, to kind of do some of that for you. But then like we talked about, like our word isn't law. Like go back and fact check us if you want to. Yeah,
please.
As well. What else you want the people to know about some of these things?
Yeah, I'll one thing that I think is kind of interesting about some of this stuff, and I would say a good example. I've always said that I think there is a middle ground for this, right? Like, I think that what's important to you, you're going to put the time in. When you go on a vacation, most people, they do research, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, where I want to eat, what's a cool place to go hang out at, what's the right hotel, right? With anything, when you're making a car purchase, you're doing all this, you crunching numbers, looking at all these. Why don't we put that same effort? Why don't we just let people force feed us, pun intended, what to think about food instead of going? There's a lot of, information that you can find much more freely than you could back in the day.
Yeah, for sure.
You can go to libraries. I don't know if people do that anymore, man. It's kind of sad, but you can go to libraries. If you don't want, if you're lazy, just pop Google up on your phone, and you can look up a lot of this stuff. Honestly, stuff that is objective to what you're trying to figure out. Not stuff that's slanted, not stuff that's biased. To say, hey, no one should ever eat a hot dog ever again, because I don't think that that's what it's about. So I think that's one side of it. And then I think someone who's worked in the food industry my entire career, I think we can be much more transparent. One of the best things I saw in looking in this is I was on Hebrew National's website. And when they did their ingredient listing, when you could click on each ingredient and it told you exactly what it was for. And I was like, that's awesome. So if you combine two of those things, someone going and saying, I like Hebrew National, but I'm feeling a little bit uneasy about what's in there. But you Google it, and I thought that is the perfect example of them putting, because I looked on Oscar's website, Nathan's. This is a store brand, so they don't have one. But I thought just that little piece of them putting, hey, this is this ingredient, this is what it's for. That's a big piece right there. I think that would help with a lot in the food industry, because you got a lot of people demonizing it and saying, oh, well, they're in bed with Big Pharma and they want to make us sick so that we can be in the hospitals and they can make all the money off of that. And then they got a under the table deal. As someone who's done this, there's nobody that's coming to me and saying, Alex, you got to put that in the formula.
Yeah.
Or you can't do this within the formula. there are parameters and stuff because, again, these are formulations, are recipes. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little technical. These are recipes that have been around for over 100 years. So they ain't just letting nobody come in and touch Oreos. You ain't just coming in and touch a Doritos. Because there's a formula there that works. But I do think that there is some better transparency that we can be because we want to feed the community. And I feel like we want to do it responsibly. I don't think there's anybody that's like evil laugh and like saying, oh, I'm going to put all of this crazy stuff and horsehair and all these different things in it.
Trimming.
Just because. Yes.
From the chicken, from the pork, and what was it?
One way to think about this as you look at this is on the wieners, they talk about the first 3 ingredients: mechanically separated chicken, mechanically separated turkey. So think about when you roast the chicken at home, right? You cut all your parts off. There's still some meat left. My dad, he is, man, straight up country boy. He'll look at a carcass and be like, no, I still can get some meat up off of that. That is what those are derived from. And what happens is they take all of these carcasses and they put it in a vat that takes this mesh screen. So think of like anybody who's ever seen like a butcher, they have like these plates. And you can, do different sizes, different holes in there. And what happens is that there's like an auger. So think of like a screw that's pushing those frames up against that plate, and meat is coming out. The meat from the carcass, leftover meat, is coming out on the other side. Now there's going to be somebody that's going to say, oh, Alex, what about the bones and what about this? So there's testing that goes on at these plants that they can do bone detection. So there's people that they're called quality control, food quality control people that work in these plants, and they test it to make sure that there's not bone that is discoverable within that meat that's then sent out to suppliers to make the product with. And that's really an example of, I know a lot of people have heard of recycling. That's an example of upcycling, right? So if I can take something that otherwise would go in the trash and we would lose money on, and I can turn that into...
Because they talk about that helping reduce the waste of food.
Yes.
And then also, too, I think there is limitation. I think the Food Administration puts, I think, like a 15% cap on how much mechanically separated can go into a product as well. So,
So these are things that people, again, don't be... I know not everyone has a food sciences that they can text and tap, but hey, consider reading food sciences for the culture. That's why we want y'all to engage with us and say, hey, man, you talked about hot dogs. I want you to talk about one that's really funny to me is, people that they're like, hey, I don't want to eat my steak nothing more than, well done, because I don't want that blood coming.
Break down next episode. Maybe break that down next episode.
I
talk about different.
These are things that I want you guys to be armed with. And again, I'm not the person that want to make you choose sides. I'm not saying, hey, man, you need to eat that Impossible because that is that. I'm giving you the information, then you decide what you want to. That's our platform. We're not here to clickbait. We're not here to say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is the information. Now decide, okay, man, I went away from hot dogs, but now with this information, I feel a little bit better, and I can go towards it. Or you say, hey, man,
your boy's not stopping.
Hey, DapperDom and your boy, we letting you know we still team hot dogs. So if we pull up to your cookout and you don't got a few of these or some sausages on there, hey, we gonna have some problems.
Some problems. But yeah, hopefully this show was insightful, man. We appreciate y'all rocking with us. Like I said, hey, we'll probably put a poll out there on our social media, kind of engaging, like, what's your favorite type of hot dog in the show comments? Like, put, hey, what are some unusual things that you like? Put on your hot dog or whatever. Or even if it's not unusual, let us know, man, how you dressing up your hot dog. Hopefully, you ain't dressing it up like a salad. Wow. Although, I guess it adds a little health benefit to the hot dog.
See, hey, there go the health coach, man. I'll try to help y'all out with that balance. We get all them veggies and stuff on it. We be good to go, man. But hey, we appreciate y'all, man. I think this is stuff that is going to be good for you all. If there's other things that you guys want to know, let us know. We may even drop in our comments maybe a breakdown of one of these, a full ingredient breakdown, what each one serves as, just to give you guys a little bit more, bonus contact and just make sure that you guys, the cultures, prepared with the information they need, man.
Please, like we always say, like, share, subscribe. We appreciate you rocking with us.
Yes, sir. We out, man.